Good evening, everyone. It's Ross here. I should be up in the top right have your screen. Just going to get warmed up. There's no obligation to have your cameras on or microphones on. It's entirely up to you. I'm on a double screen here. I'm just going to say hello in the chat box. Could you just tell me where you're watching from, and I'll give your town, village, or city a little shout out. Could you also tell me what you teach, and I will try to cover as many bases as I can. So thanks for signing up. So for CPD, but I can see one or two of you might look like you're still in some kind of work environment. So Sunderland, Wigan. Thank you, Sophie and Vicky. Where else are we watching from, guys? And could you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Okay, great. So Maidstone, geography teacher. Halen Island. I don't know where Halen Island is, Lorraine. Where is that? Bipolar. Someone from London, someone from Dover. Okay, anybody else? Aha, near Portsmouth. Okay, you learn something new every day. Morpeth, Northumberland. Okay. So there's quite a few people watching this recorded as well in different time zones. So I'm going to crack on and feel free to just put things in the chat box and we'll go through things. I'm going to send you all the slides, all the recording, coupon code as promised, and a little CPD certificate for your own records. And at the end, I'll stay on the line, ask loads of questions. So what I'd like to do is give you a summary of everything I've read about remote teaching from a research perspective throughout the whole pandemic. And then I'm just going to just mash up loads of kind of strategies that I use in my teaching life, but also teaching teachers through webinars. So I've turned my background off deliberately because I'm going to show you a few little examples as we go through. So I'm just going to start with my first slide. So the first kind of recommendations, this comes from the University of Manitoba, Canada. And this actually comes from the health education sector. And I think a lot of it's transferable. So every school's at a different starting point. Just in the UK alone, there are 32,000 schools. I know a school not too far away from me who's only just started Google Classroom. I've been using Google Classroom for nearly 10 years in some shape or form. So all schools are at different starting points. I think the critical thing is with homeschooling, remote teaching now statutory requirement for people here watching in England, and because I know people are watching elsewhere, you're going to have to review your material. Not everything you can deliver in a normal, 60-minute lesson, however long the lessons are, will be able to be delivered in the same way. So, last week alone, here where I am based, we've had a few snow days recently. So suddenly all the kind of content gets changed as a teacher when you set your objective to your kids. So the first recommendation for your schemes of work, your curriculum plans, or if your school leader's watching, is you need to think critically about what can be realistically achieved, as well as not going for kind of lower standards. We know that. The second recommendation is once you've reviewed those learning objectives, you need to review your teaching resources. If I think back to March, we're in different circumstances here in the UK, but teacher workload went through the roof as we adapted lots of things online. We found we didn't have enough resources, allocating kids with laptops, and we're still doing this today. So a lot of the things went out as physical packs, whereas much more, now we're a bit better prepared, much of it is, not exclusively, but more of it is online as more kids have got access. There's a lot of problems still out there. Just for my context, for your understanding, I've probably reached about 8,000 teachers through webinars since March, but from schools to Brazil, which we know is in difficult circumstances, to schools in South Korea, where their teachers are now back in classrooms with their kids and hold staff inset days. So the whole world's at different stages with this. Just before I pop to that one, I suppose, think about how you are integrating your resources online. So in the chat box, give me some help. Are you using Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, maybe something totally different? What are you using? Okay, so we've got two teams, Google Classroom Teams, Google Classroom, Google Classroom, Google Classroom Meets. Okay, so the vast majority. Okay, Seesaw, Moodle, Librarian. Okay, great. Okay, so you've got to learn all the tools. So give yourself a rating, or your beginner, intermediate, advanced, with all your with all the technology on that platform. B, I, or an A. Beginner, intermediate, or A. How would you rate yourself? I won't tell you, head teacher. Okay, there was one A. There's two A's. Okay, the rest are I's and B's. Okay, so I'm going to try and give you some strategies toward the end. So bear with me with the research. Okay, next strategy, explore strategies to engage learners. So how do you engage learners in an online environment? How do you forge positive connections? I'll give you one personal story. My son's in year 5. The moment the school sent a live video assembly or a recorded video from the head teacher or a recorded video from his teacher, his eyes totally lit up. Now, I'm speaking from my own personal context. Every child's different, every school's different. But we need engagement. If for a moment I increase your cognitive load, I just switch my video off. Now you're having to work a bit harder and listen to my voice. And I've got to make sure my strategies are just as engaging through narration, which is hard. If I just come out my slides for a moment, I'm going to signpost this and put it in the chat box for you. I wrote on my blog last night another bit of research. This one here, this yellow one, using hand signals. Okay, so what's the time? Give me a drink, chewing gum in the bin, all those kind of non-verbal signals we use. Now, if I put that in the chat box, just put that on your website, on your side, there it is there. And let me, while I remember, there's my email address if you've got any questions. But if you skim to the bottom of this research, I've got a couple of video examples of me using my hands, which is why I kind of came to my classroom environment here, or me doing a screen recording. So you'll see me in the top right of your video. If I look down there, suddenly I'm pointing to the slideshow. So I've got a good awareness of where my video is in this presentation. So I can go, look there, it's over there, kids. So I've got two little videos on the screen, and at the bottom, here are, all these blogs are about a 3-minute read each. So find one that's applicable for you. In Google different platforms, you can make the size of your video different. I'm recording this in Zoom, so my video is constrained to the corner, but if you're doing a screencast where you're marking a piece of work and letting kids watch it back, change the size of your video, but size matters. Also, when we gaze, if I go like this, and I also pause, those things also improve retention, as well as this research using hand signals. So if you're teaching kids words or vocabulary, or 5, 4, 3, all these things make a big difference to memory retention. So thank you for some comments in the chat box. I'll come to them in a moment. Okay, so there's a couple of quick little wins there. Engaging content. How do you come across dynamically online rather than the ball? How are you going to design your current resources for an online world? So give me some ideas in the chat box. What's been the best win for you so far? Either a resource, a website, or a particular methodology, and I'll shout yours out to everyone else so everyone can benefit here. So bring them over. Let's see. So Quizlet, I love Quizlet. Seneca Learn. I'll show you Whiteboard Fi, Microsoft Forms, live cooking demos. Oh, I'd like to watch one of them, Lorraine. Google Meet live lessons, Modern Feed, Padlet, Forms, short do now quizzes. Okay, keep them coming. Padlet. In fact, I'm going to come out the slides one more time. I apologise. This blog, I wrote this at the start of lockdown. It's had nearly 200,000 readers, which is nuts. I think it's probably timely rather than being brilliant ideas, but let me just put it in the chat box for you. All I did was simply collate as many things as I could think of. So at the top, you've got resources for people. So you might find one that's new for you. You might want to try. Sharing videos in different ways rather than through your school portal. I use SpeakPipe, which is a little voicemail widget on my website. So rather than getting teachers to send me type email messages, they send little voice messages and it pings in my inbox. Great little strategy. And then resources for teachers here, loads. So I've been inundated. If I said hundreds, I'd be lying to you. I've had hundreds of EdTech organizations send things my way, and I've just been adding them to the list or shouting them out on Twitter or what have you. So there's tons of stuff, tons of stuff. So recommendation 4, to to reduce extraneous load. So when we talk about memory here, when we're so please again in the chat box, am I going too fast or too slow? It's important to ask. Otherwise, I'll keep plowing on thinking I've got to finish in 20 minutes. Am I going too fast or too slow? Please tell me. I can take the criticism. So to reduce extraneous load, go slow. I'm giving you words and pictures slowly in a sequence rather than I'm giving you all this all in one go with all the different slides. So I'm going through it one step at a time. Okay, so that's pretty obvious. The challenge for teachers is we don't have time to adapt all our content. You'll be familiar, some of you, not all, so I better make sure that I mention it. The word dual coding, recent bit of research that's re-emerged, words and pictures. We know images speak 1,000 words. Use as many images as you can. It supports retrieval practice. It also helps extraneous load. In terms of memory, you've got how the material is presented, such as my slide here, but then how I present it can also aid or hinder learning. Now I'm going to pause for a moment in this one. Maximize the technology. So I could do some surveys. I can stop my slides and just come to my video here. What I would need to do is I pause. Right, kids, look at the whiteboard, all the things you do in the classroom. I'm going to give you a couple of little tricks. So do we all have visualizers in the chat box? Do you have a little visualizer, everybody? Give me a little yes or no in the chat box. Okay. Right, so I've got one here. Let me just switch it on. Here we go. So quick little fiddle on my Zoom button here. He says, I'm going to get this working in a second. Should have had that test before. If you can't afford to buy one, and sometimes they cost a lot, there it is there. So now you got my hand on the table. I'll just plug my bookmark Plan Teach, just switch that back. If you can't afford one of those, you can buy a pack of 6 of these from iPivo. And what they are, they fold a little bit of plastic and they've got a mirror on the back. And if you stick that over your webcam, it then replicates. I've got 2 computers on the go at the moment. It then replicates what's on your table. So if you want to do a drawing or a demo or record it, it's a cheaper version of a visualizer. So that's by iPivo. They only come in packs of 6. I don't think they're too expensive, but it certainly save you spending 50 quid if you want to do something different. Right, let me get my slides back up for you. So there's a couple of things I would recommend. Next little strategy, in fact, before I put my slides up, I've got a maths equation here, okay? Now I'm going to show you the importance of non-verbal signals and how it can also enhance learning. So I'm going to do 2 methods here. 7 times something equals 28. That's version 1. Here's version 2. 7 times something equals 28. Very small. What's the difference? In the chat box, give me the answers. Version 1, 7 times something equals 28. Version 2, 7 times something equals 28. What's the difference? What's the difference? In chats in the comments in the chat box, sorry. Okay, so the difference is the double tap. 7 times something equals 28. 7 times something equals 28. To aid learning, what I need to do is, rather than you see the back of my bald head, 7 times something, to support your load, I need to face the students. 7 times something equals 28. I emphasize with the double tap. I give you direct eye contact and I emphasize the important number. So that's a really important one, as well as being confident enough to pause. So let's pop back to our slides. So you should be able to see slides again. So 5 and 6, talking about different technology, you're all using different ones. And There's lots of different things that we could do, plus the visualizers. Number 7, what have you done in the chat box? Give me 1 or 2 kind of heads up. How have you adapted your assessment? You know, people working in different contexts, primary, secondary, different countries, with all the dialogue with exams. How have you reshaped your assessment strategies just day to day? I'm not talking about high stakes exams. Are you still doing the same types of assessment in your curriculum, or has everything been put on hold? Okay, thank you. 1 or 2 comments, thank you. So we've got new policies going on. We've got a rubric on Google Classroom. Still delivering exam questions, some people. Okay, Microsoft Forms to collect data. Okay, so thank you. The research recommends here, you know, formative assessments, particularly in an online world where it can gather that data for you. There's so much out there now. If you go back to that blog, that second link I gave in the chat box, there's loads of great examples in there, loads. Seneca Learning, This is Century, God, there's loads. Class charts, there's hundreds. Show my homework, etc. Okay, tip number 8. You know, obviously, once you've got your assignment defined, you then going to have to work out how to deliver this online. With all this technology, you can definitely do this. Technology. How is it? I'm talking this one here from a staff perspective. Has your school, before the pandemic, prioritized ICT? Yes or no? In the chat box. Right, so I've seen 1 yes so far. Now, I love my technology. I've always worked in schools with only 1 school out of the 5 schools I spent my 25 years in the classroom. 1 school had really good ed tech software. The rest was a struggle. It was redundant. It was old. It needed replaced. And we bought in everything, but it never worked because the computers couldn't cope with the software. So, you know, ICT has to be a priority. Before the pandemic, yes, school funding. I'm going to give you some more tips towards the end on this. So we need to familiarize ourselves with the technology. We need to define our assessments as well as how to deliver it. But if you don't have the technology or the training to support all these things, it's entirely waste of your time. How have you communicated safety and expectations? So does your school have an online policy? I'm going to hope that everyone says yes, but there might be 1 or 2 no's. So give me that yes or no in the chat box. And I'm going to assume this has been communicated with parents. I've seen 1 no. Another school, another teacher says they're developing one. Okay, so you need to have, there's plenty online. If you need some examples, ping me an email and I'll send you some examples. You know, this kind of stuff should have been done well before the pandemic. Obviously, we're now teaching remotely. You know, did you know university environments can deliver an online teaching for nearly 30 years? Kids do virtual schools. All this stuff is pretty, you know, readily available. It's just not mass market stuff like it is now today. Okay, so we've obviously got, you know, communicate those expectations and then always have a plan B. I'm sure you've had some technical glitches with your Wi-Fi at home. What has been your plan B? Give me an answer and I'll shout them out for everyone else so we can grab 1 or 2 ideas from each other. So someone says use the phone. So Vicky, to connect on Zoom or Teams with your phone? Any other ideas? What's your plan B when the connection collapses? So pre-recorded, okay, sent by an email, that alleviates a lot of stress. iPad backup when the computer crashes. Okay, any more? All resources uploaded, emails, Teams, class charts, have an assignment with set materials, yes, so reduce stress. But develop a wide range, you know, pick and mix, I suppose, of strategies when your live lesson, you know, collapses. Okay, then the last recommendation, and I'm going to go into some ideas and just pause for a brief moment. How are you know, does your school take some time out to just have a pastoral chat? So do you still have form time, for example? Have you shown kids how to use the online technology? Are you booking kind of parent evening appointments? I'm sure you are, but not everyone is. So you might just be here for some ideas. So it's good to see people are saying they still have form time. There's a great website called School Cloud. I've been arguing for this for years. It's a virtual staff room for parents, 3-minute appointments, then the video cuts off. Brilliant for busy teachers. So check that one out if you've not had a look at that one before. But someone said they use School Cloud. I love it. So recommendation here is, remote learning contexts, regular group assignments, regular kind of pastoral chats, small group discussions. You've all got the safeguarding issues. In some schools, it's videos on. In other schools, it's videos off. So every different kind of context will matter. So those are your 12 recommendations. Now, behind all these slides, if I just point them to you, I've got them all explained in a bit more detail. So I'm just going to whiz through all these and not go through them all. And you've got the link to the full research. Now, you're going to want, I know you're here for some more ideas. So I'm going to pause on this slide. I'm going to talk to you in a moment for the second half from a curriculum approach, department level, from a teacher training level in the middle, and then a pedagogical approach, and just give you probably your kind of best bets. So any questions before I carry on? We're kind of 20 minutes in. I'm conscious of cognitive load. All your ability to pay attention is currently suffering. So grab some water, stretch your legs, and I'm going to start in 30 seconds. Any questions? Okay, no questions. Right. So when I first researched, got one question just come in. Okay, thank you. Any tips for boosting student interaction would be good. Okay, I'll pose one or two suggestions in a second, Natalie, and I'll give you one or two templates. I'm just going to recap on some of these in here, but just some of the things that I've researched. Pause, hand signals, gazing at the content. If you're on a board or a little whiteboard, or you're recording a video by a board in your room at home. I know my video's in the top right hand corner, even though I can't see it on my screen. I know you can. So I know that I need to look down here and point it's over there. Knowing when to turn my video on and off. The importance of non-verbal signals. All these small tweaks do make a difference. Again, you're going to need to get a lot of feedback from your kids. And then little cheap little solutions such as this. I've got a little kind of tripod that holds my mobile phone sometimes. At the moment, I've got it on over there, doing a kind of time lapse. I've got some content of this. Just I've got kind of screen annotations, etc. So I know in your Google Classrooms and things like that, you've got the ability to kind of annotate all these types of things, and you can get all kids doing that. Before I go into all these, I'm going to just come out very quickly and just show you two of my favorites. I'm sure one or two of you might have seen these. First one is Classroom Screen. There's a basic one. Let me just get the Classroom Screen. This is free. I'm going to put this in the chat box. There it is there. What I love about this is it's got all your things all in one place. So when you're physically in the classroom or even online, you're grabbing your timer, trying to mix the kids' names into a dice and all sorts. So you can do your drawing straight on the screen. You got your little traffic light thing up there, your timer, you got your clocks, you got your calendar, all to hands, QR codes, add in your media, sounds, a little dice if you want to roll the dice. And it's great. It's really, really good. So that's Classroom Screen. The other one is Whiteboard Fi. Every kid gets a code. So here, this one's coming through in the chat box. And they all annotate online and then show and reveal. That's another great resource. I know Mote is recently, I think it's MOTE, it's part of a Google Classroom plugin. And I know also Teams has just only recently done the breakout room feature. I've been using this, I've been doing webinars for 10 years. These things have been available for a long time. This is Google Documents. I've got a plugin here, if you can see it on the screen, called Kaizena. So if you're using Google Docs, or it might work on Microsoft Teams, let me just type in it here on the chat box so you got the spelling. It's a plugin to Google Docs. So what it allows me to do is, Some of the things that I've been doing for 10 years is I use voice dictation, which is why I've written so many blogs and books. So if I just go to tools, voice typing, hands off the keyboard, I'm just demonstrating how quickly it is to write written feedback to students simply by speaking to my device, full stop. New line, imagine if you worked in this way, question mark. So it's a bit clunky and you'll need to practice. I use something called Drag and Dictate. I think the company's called Nuance. It's about £550. I only buy it because I write books, so it's worth my time. And it's artificial intelligence that learns your accent. However, Google Docs is free, and so is Kaizena plugin. Now you can see on my work here, I've made some mistakes. I've written the word my twice, or at least my voice. But if this was a student piece of work, you can see I've highlighted it over here. I can leave images, add notes, colors, all sorts, or I can leave a voice note here. Hello, Ross, I've just seen your work. You've made a couple of mistakes in this document. Could you fix them by the next time we meet in our lesson? If I stop that, it gets uploaded. The student logs onto their device, or mum does at home, or whoever it is. They click on this, they can see my note, they play it back. Hello, Ross, I've just seen your work. You've made a couple of mistakes in this document. Could you fix them by the next time we meet in our lesson? I'll cover my mouth to make sure that you saw it was the voice. So little things like this, good for language, good for practicing and rehearsing, etc., etc. Okay, let me pop back to this. So I'm going to give you 4 or 5 key ideas, and I'm not going to go through all 15 of these. I'll send you all the slides. We know that we need to develop IT competency for our children. We know that we need to adapt content online. We also know that we've got to teach them, all the kind of social media areas as well. But I just talked to you about number 4 and 5 on the screen here. It's important with keeping with the research on retrieval practice and a curriculum approach. I'm not in the thick of it, you are. So it's easy for me to preach behind the scenes. But if we really believe in retrieval practice against all the pressure that we've got from government and all these kind of thinkers online, we need to be recapping on material that's been lost throughout the pandemic, this recovery curriculum, rather than always teaching new material. The challenge we've got for number 4 and 5 is parents, children think, well, miss, we've done this before. And there's always that desire to want something new. And actually, we haven't really learnt it, or we haven't developed schema. So that's a big challenge for the profession at large, full stop, number 4 and 5. So one little strategy, and I'll come back to this slide in a moment, is knowledge transfer. So this slide if you imagine on the top left what you're teaching, so whether it's, I don't know, Battle of Hastings, photosynthesis, whatever it is, you think of what it might look like come July or the next year. What's that far transfer of knowledge? How is it going to be enriched and developed in the future? So you could almost say each square represents 6 to 8 weeks. But then I've got another slide on this that you can find on my website. But the physical research says if you change the classroom, the hall or the home environment, you can support retention. Obviously, you can't go and teach in a different classroom at the moment with COVID. There's lots of research to say you want kids to get ready for their mock exams, they need to practice doing the content in that hall environment. The same goes for the middle row time, change the time of day. It's a challenge for secondary teachers because they're only seeing the kids at certain times, whereas primary teachers, a bit more flexibility. Last 2 rows, change the task and format. In terms of take-up time, this is from my book, 60-Second CPD. I don't have one on my desk. I wrote this with Hannah Beach, who's a primary deputy head. Don't do all these things at once, but consider at the end of every lesson to slow down the lesson and give kids time to think back on what's been done, and also to increase retrieval rather than making it easy thinking, what have we learned today? Always ask, what did we learn last lesson? And that's going to always encourage retrieval. So there's just kind of 5 strategies that you can choose there. Doesn't need to be 3, it could just be 1. Obviously, context matters, kids, age, stage, etc., etc. But just learn to end slowly, which is a note to myself. So I'm going to be a couple of more minutes. Before I do, just pop back to this. So the training approach, a lot of you said ICT wasn't a priority in the chat box. Have you got sufficient ICT training during the pandemic? Give me a yes or a no. And I failed to mention at the start, folks, my apologies. The messages just come to me privately. Okay, so I've got a couple of no's, got 15 people watching live. And yes, I hope so because I led it. That's what I always feel like. Okay, so we've got a kind of 50-50 split. It's quite damning, really, if your school hasn't given you any ICT or CPD training at all, really, during this time. So if I go to the middle row, thanks for those comments. The best one, the thing that I've been looking at more, so let me just go through kind of 2 or 3 more ideas and I'll come back to this slide. I did this the hard way, going back 3 or 4 years. We mapped our whole school curriculum from year 7 to year 11 all across the school. It's an epic piece of work, but for once in my career, we had an entire overview of what was taking place across the school. There are so many brilliant bits of software now. I'm thinking of Info Mentor or Balance by Angel Solutions, where you can map your curriculum online. It plugs into schemes of work, then it plugs into lesson plans, and it's all mapped. So you click into a button, you can see what Ross is doing next door, and it's just fluid and revised over time rather than this static document. But I wonder how many of your schools have an overview of curriculum at this time of year, never mind during normal circumstances. So there's a challenge for all of us. The second one, I do lots of sessions on memory. I find it very fascinating. I wish it was the thing that I was taught as a new teacher. So I've got loads of webinars. I won't be able to go through it all now, but get a good grip on how we learn and then how it translates into your teaching delivery. It will make a big difference to the quality of how you teach. So more on that another time. I've got a webinar coming up next week on this if you're interested. I will say I find it very fascinating and exciting. Storytelling, the most effective teachers not only model, but they use hand signals and they tell fascinating stories to bring the curriculum to life. So there's a really interesting sequence there: surprise, structure, simplicity, specificity, and subtext. Number 1, did you know Ross is 10 foot 1 inches tall? Then I think about why you need to know I'm so tall. Then we think about watching this video, or let's go and see how big his footprints are. And then we think about the medium and long-term goal. So you can do this anyway. Surprise statement: did you know that there are 79, Jupiter has 79 moons? You can do this in any context. Think of all your children's stories. They all follow the same hallmarks. To tell stories, make learning engaging. Record little videos of you telling stories and make it dynamic. There is some real dire stuff out there. Retrieval clock. There's loads of different versions. It doesn't have to be like a clock. It can be a different shape of volcano or whatever it is. Get kids to annotate together. So I think it was Victoria asked the question earlier, how you can get kids to collaborate. So I do this box, you do this one, we then share, swap it over a class later on, they do that box, etc., etc. And you fill it in. And it doesn't have to be all in one lesson, it could be stretched over a couple of weeks or a half term. And where you can do this is just retrieve what you know about photosynthesis over time, develop metacognition. I know this, I don't yet know that, I need to find it out by next lesson. And that would be a really nice, simple approach. Now, I'm going to just pop back to this to make sure I've covered the bases, and I'm going to pause for some questions, everybody. In the middle row, not only just delivering ICT, I think all teachers should be taught memory, number 8 on the screen. And if we can master what cognitive load theory, short-term working, long-term memory, then it's going to be a great kind of social justice cause. 1, we're going to be better teachers. 2, we're going to empower our kids and parents with a better understanding of how we learn. Number 10, I always say, your school sends a newsletter and doesn't track its analytics, it's totally wasting its time and money. So I'm going to put one more thing in the chat box for you. I wrote a blog last week about all my secrets. I email 45,000 teachers every week. I know exactly where their location is, roughly speaking, I'm not being Big Brother here. I know what device they're using. I know what they're clicking on because I track the data. So in the chat box, everybody, send this to your head teacher and ask them if they use software such as MailChimp. Let me just show you a couple of graphics. There's my newsletter windows. I know peak time, despite me not wanting teachers to work on a Sunday night, it's when they work. There's the open rates, there's the engagement rates, here's all the clicks, there's the demographics. The vast majority of teachers are female in 35 to 54 age group. There's what happens when I send a newsletter. These are the clicks. I've got all the data exactly on where clicks to. And I used to use this as a school leader sending emails rather than just printing them on paper, kids tucking them in the bin as they go out the school gates and the messages never getting home. It's the same with reports. Like independent school, well, all schools, but independent schools write 3-page reports for parents that pay 40 grand. They don't know if the parents read them. So software such as School Cloud makes a difference. You can track who's clicking what, how long they're watching your video for, and what groups of parents aren't engaging with you at all. The bottom one, I will just point out 13, 14, well, I mean, teaching pedagogy, plan to be engaging, model and explain, chunk and scaffold. Questions, develop a wide range of question strategies. It's not the number of questions you ask, but the types of questions. And then the last one here is timely feedback. We know feedback's got to be manageable, it's got to be meaningful and motivational. And when you've got 30 kids to deal with, it's a constant ask. And I suspect throughout the whole pandemic, not only have you had all your school leaders telling you what to do, you've had all your parents asking, I want this and I want that, and you can never make everyone happy. And ultimately your focus has been trying to make kids happier. So that's it, folks. I'm going to pause. I'm going to stay in line for questions. I'll go through the chat box. I'm going to send you all the slides of the 12 teaching tips and the 15 kind of curriculum, ICT and pedagogical ideas, and all the blank templates so you don't have to do any extra work to create some resources. And I hope it makes a little bit of a difference, gives you a bit of food for thought. And I'm 5 minutes over. I promised 30 minutes on your sofa, so I'm going to stop. So any questions, unmute yourself, ask some questions. I'll clip the recording here, so let me just stop the recording. So